first off, pain, in my view, only happens in the mind. It is because it's a reaction to a signal that's trying to get your attention. And just like the heart can produce a lot of power, the heart's trying to tell you the truth, and your mind, emotional pain is your heart tells you the truth and your brain is perceiving it wrong. Like my mother dying was something I felt in the heart. My response in my head is I couldn't live without her. That was the pain. If my mind would have perceived it as you're in the beginning of an incredible journey that's going to help humanity and lots of people you love, and you're going to have a mind expanded like you can't imagine, it wouldn't have hurt.
Welcome to Beyond the Pain, the podcast that explores what it really takes to break free from chronic pain and reclaim your life. I'm your host, Lee Brandon, and someone who's spent over 2 decades helping people get to the root cause of pain that no one else could explain. Whether you're dealing with long-term back issues, joint pain, nerve discomfort, or mysterious symptoms that just won't go away, this show is here to help you go deeper. Because beyond the pain, there's clarity, strength, and power waiting for you. Each week, we'll uncover the physical, emotional, biochemical, and energetic causes of pain and how to transform them. Let's dive deep into this week's episode. This week, I'm joined by Stan Kurtz, and we get into a really interesting conversation about chronic pain, inflammation, stress, trauma, and why pain may often be a sign that something deeper is going on in the body. We also explore the idea of looking beyond symptoms and trying to understand some of the underlying drivers that may be affecting overall health. The only unfortunate thing about the interview is that we only had an hour, and I felt Stan had so much more to share, so I can't wait to invite him back for round 2. It's definitely a thought-provoking episode, and one that challenges some of the more conventional ways we think about pain. Stan, welcome to Beyond the Pain. It's great to have you on the show.
Oh, very happy to be here. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. Yeah, just want to let the listeners and viewers know we've just had this amazing chat about loads of health stuff and nothing to do with pain, but
should have recorded it. We had a good podcast. Yeah. It's like a pre-podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we're going to spend the next hour or so and we're going to really dive into pain. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Same.
So Stan, for people hearing your name for the first time, how did your own experiences with suffering and dead ends in the medical system lead you into the work that you're doing today?
Solid question. Okay, so first thing that happened, and I think trauma needs to happen. I'm calling it trauma, but events need to happen in order for people to start to see beyond the traditional, to be able to expand. I think a good thing to know to begin with is that the science shows that we only see 0.3% of actual reality based on our limited senses, our limited capacity to process data, and our memory. Like you can't, if I ask someone to repeat what I said 3 sentences ago, word for word, you can't. So between our senses, our processing ability, and our memory, we actually perceive a very small part of reality, which means we hand off our decision-making to people that we assume know something. And that leads a very limited experience in regards to the possible outcome you have. So you need events to happen in your life to be able to start expanding your 0.3% in service of yourself. And there's no one, I believe, that is going to have better decision-making ability and more intention than you have of the love of yourself. And that may need work.
You mean it's not AI?
Well, you can use AI as a tool if you understand it and understand its limitations. I love tools, and if a doctor, researcher, parent, someone else that has experienced something, or AI, all these things can be tools for you. But the intention needs to come from, in my view, like it has to come from your heart. It has to come from your intuition. That's the best choice, because anything else could be. Any establishment, any government will have motives that aren't necessarily about you, and in that, it gets lost. So, what happened for me is, I was lucky enough for my mother to be diagnosed with cancer when I was 10, and I say that way because
Mm.
In the moment, she was the love of my life. She understood me better than anybody, and I was a bit of a squirrely kid in regards to how I think, and so but she understood me. I lost the person essentially in 5 years that understood me the most. So that was a huge traumatic thing. And I also saw that it was in a system that did not know how to save her, and it was the thing that was most important for me to want to see saved. Later, my son was diagnosed with nonverbal autism with seizures, right side muscle weakness, distended belly, floppy child syndrome, hypotonia, sensory integration processing dysfunction, gross motor delays, fine motor delays. And they said that he would not recover, that it was not treatable, and that this is going to be a hard life and expect to deal with a hard life. So that was also a pain that was tremendous and debilitating. And I went to a conference, and there was a piece of science that went up. I didn't want to go to the conference, and I didn't think it was going to be anything that was a breakthrough for me, but I went because I didn't want to learn speech, occupational, physical, behavioral therapy. Like I didn't want to support this thing that I didn't want. And there was a researcher there, thank God, that put up one slide that said kids with autism have high copper levels. And I'm like, what does that have to do with a lifelong condition that's neurological? That in other words, I was told this. How could that be? And in the moment, and things can. We were saying before, like things can happen in downloads that are like wows. I get wows all the time, and that was a big wow. It's like, are you saying that these kids are sick and we're not taking care of them because they don't speak? Is that what we're actually saying? And it's unconscionable. By the way, if you are comfortable with the unconscionable, in other words, the thing that you do not want to believe, the thing that's outside the scope of your thinking, you have the ability for a breakthrough. If you want something extraordinary in your life, I've learned you need to do extraordinary things. And sometimes you need to disbelieve the things that you originally believed, especially if the outcome of those beliefs do not get you what you want. So I went up to that researcher and I said, are you telling me that they need, and by the way, this definitely applies for pain. So if you think we're going to talk about autism all day long, don't. So I said, are you saying that they have high copper levels, and if you just give zinc, that the copper levels go down? Is that what you're saying? And he's like, yeah, that's pretty much my talk. And I said, well, how many studies are there like this on that? And he says, a lot. What I found was there were, after taking out all the physical therapy, behavioral therapy, speech occupational therapies, they're just looking at biological possibilities, biological nuances that are inside this condition. There were 750 studies 22 years ago that showed these kids were sick. Showed and that broke down into a pattern. Pattern recognition is super cool, very important if you're looking to see truth. So if you took out anything that had to do with medicine, if you took out anything that had to do with genetics, if you took out anything that had to do with therapy in placating the condition, there were 750 studies that showed that these kids were sick. And I was able to pattern recognize 6 or 7 categories of the 750 studies. This took 15 months, by the way, full time. And it was it was nutritional issues. Okay. It was toxins, infections, and then everything else was sort of like downstream. Inflammation, GI distress, and there's a lot of biochemistry inside that was going on. A lot of this is downstream from toxins and infections, in my view. Not even in my view. I can state more than that. So when I started learning that, then I said, okay, well, which do my son have? And then I ran some tests on him to see where he was off. And then, plus there were some that you can't test for. So you just assume that it's a possibility and you want to include that in a protocol that I made for him. And then I looked at what's safe and effective. And something you and I have in common with from our earlier talk is that I didn't care where these things came from. I was very interested, if it came from Africa, great. If it was from a root, a botanical, if it came from, Oriental cultures, Native American, mom's remedies, wherever, I don't care. Whether it was the 1800s or if it's something that needed to be manufactured today, I did not care. I was just looking for what the science pointed to in a direction that logically made sense. And it took me 15 months to read the information, sort the information, and then from there strategize testing and then an approach. And it took 4 months and he was off the spectrum. He's one of the more recovered kids. You'd never know. Like, people say, "Oh, does he talk?" I'm like, no, you don't understand. He's ranked. He was ranked number 2 in the world at competitive professional robotics, like 250-pound robots. He's 25 years old. He's crushing it. He's a great human. He's an incredible human, gifted human. And and he was gifted before, but he was just wrapped up in this condition. I believe my thing and how it applies to this is that what I learned there, I've been working on in one way or another for 22 years in humanity, and that we're all affected by the same things. These kids just got affected the most first. Many of them are the most gifted people on the planet that are seeming to be kind of targeted by the way the environment and structures of the world are. And that I break down into the way we do it now is people come in here. I don't need to know what they have. I don't want to know what they have. I don't know why they're interested in coming. I just take it down to a blood drop, put it on a screen, and I can kind of tell you just about everything going on in their traumatic life, in their physical life, and then we go from there. But in terms of pain, keeping it to the structure of this podcast, I know we can talk about this in many different ways, and you have the capacity of that. I admire you for that. But as far as pain, what we see is when the toxins and infections and technology, I'm bold enough to say that these days, we see technology in the blood every day, stuff that is unnatural, not supposed to be there, and we understand how to remove that or disable that. When you have those things, you will have inflammation and susceptibility in your joints and in your muscles and in your bones. And so we see that as part of the verticals that come in this place. A lot of people have brain fog. They have energy issues. They're having trouble with their cardiovascular. Like, we even work with high-end Olympic athletes to improve their cardiovascular, like, majorly, by looking at the root cause of things. And I've got AI built that's designed to do what I did back in the day: look at the medical literature, the science, and then pull out possible root causes, and then take a look at all the different verticals in the world that we can have access to and give hints as to directions to go. And this is just stuff we hand off to people when they're here. But for us, we've developed the tools for those 6 or 7 things that I found in my son's condition, which seem to be 22 years later, the things that are involved in just about every condition. So when we are looking at pain often is things like, fungus that hit joints over time, plus inflammation and, activation of the immune system over time. And it's downstream from that, where you have arthritis or things like that, or just the susceptibility for, I just took one step today and I've got joint pain now. Like, this stuff is all related to a system that has been hijacked by toxins and infections, and stress and trauma is also related to how the body responds to it. And how to unravel that and root causes is kind of what we do all day long. And we can talk about some things that would be easy and accessible. But ultimately, I want to show some slides too, what blood looks like that causes this stuff, and what it looks like pre and post and the types of conditions. But I'm going to pass back to you because you only asked one question, and I could fill a show with an answer.
No, it's all good. I actually prefer it when I do less speaking, because it normally means I've got a good guest, right?
Aww.
So yeah, cool. That's really interesting. And I mean, I've said multiple times on this podcast that, if we're talking about dis-ease and pain conditions are a form of dis-ease.
Yes.
From my experience, that dis-ease is caused by a nutritional deficiency, toxicity, mental stress, emotional trauma.
Yep.
And I think this can probably fit into stress in a way, could possibly fit into toxins, but non-native EMFs.
Yep.
And for me, they're the 5 things that I tend to see causing dis-ease and pain.
I would add infections to it.
Okay.
And infections can be fungal infections, for example. I'm not talking about viral, but fungus is a very real thing in things like arthritis, for example. So I would, we can add that in, but
there's a reason why I don't call them infections.
Oh, because you're saying manufactured unnatural things inside us that may be not necessarily transmittable other than sex.
Well, my understanding, and my understanding's open to be changed,
Yeah, sure.
is that things like fungus that we know produce mycotoxins and certain bacteria that
Yeah.
produce hexa
Uh-huh.
LPS,
Uh-huh.
yes, they're damaging to the body, but they're playing a vital role in the body. So I look at it at like that rather than it's an infection.
Okay. Fair enough.
But I'm open to being incorrect, but
No, I
that's
like the framing. I'm not sure of how fungus, for example, but it does actually play a role in the microbiome in management. So let's say runaway infection or runaway bacteria or fungus that is potentially accidentally doing harm.
well. This is how it fits into my framework.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I said toxins,
Okay, that's
right?
fair.
So mycotoxins, endotoxins. I mean, I suppose we can get bogged down
I
on
like
the.
it. No, I like it. It's a good nuance. And then if you say parasites, for example, what people think are parasites are often technology. It seems to be manufactured technology because the body
Well,
relates to these things, and I can show you in a microscope. But
mm,
these things, which I find in water, they're in every glass of water you drink. It's the same things we see in the blood. So it seems to be something that, in my view, is either horribly accidental or potentially targeted because it's in every water supply we've ever tested and every water bottle we've ever tested. It's in surgical saline, and it seems to be everywhere. But these things, the immune system goes right by it. You can actually watch the white blood cells go right by it when it's alive. But when you disable it, when you disable the energy that's in it, it rips it apart. So that's not natural, because the body, it's stealth. So
mm,
nature would have figured this out a long time ago. And anything stealth I see is unnatural. So there's unnatural
mm,
things that other people might say are infections. I sometimes say the word parasites, but ultimately what I'm saying is something unnatural, and I believe a technology that's inside people. We have a lot
mm.
of crossover for sure. And the nuances we're talking about, I think we would resolve just by vernacular.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess having spoken to a lot of people on this podcast, um, in particular, one guy called Daniel Roytas who's been on a few times. He's a former lecturer in naturopathy.
Uh-huh.
He moved away from that because he realised he didn't believe in it anymore. Um, so he was suggesting things like bacteria, fungi. What's their role in nature? They clear up the mess,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And what he's suggesting is that's what they do in the human body. And when you look at things like fungus, quite often they're sequestering things like heavy metals. They're actually protecting us,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Yes.
which is an interesting
I love it.
concept.
No, I love it. Yeah, when one can say if you have a high fungal load that happens to end up on your joints and you get pain from it, that what's behind it could potentially be a high metals load. So unraveling the root causes at the level you're talking about, I agree with it. And
Mm,
the other thing too, to agree with that is that Propioniobacteria, for example, is a very, very important bacteria in the body. It helps you to get B12 to the brain. It helps you essentially methylate or pre-digest and make more bioavailable a lot of the important things you're eating. That seems to be like wiped out after COVID. And I see a remarkable difference in people because of it. One of our best remedies was actually bringing that bacteria into the process of doing manufacturing of vitamins. It's like first is you methylate them, with certain bacteria like Propioni, and then you can make it liposomal, and then all of a sudden you have something that the brain has been starving for. And we see brain scans change in seconds, where you can show like an ADHD type brain. I can show slides of this, by the way, so we can get some visuals up. But do you want me to do that right now? I can grab
yeah,
that.
go for
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Okay, cool.
It genuinely frustrates me how many people are told their pain is in their head or just age. Pain isn't random, and it always has causes. One of the most overlooked is diet. Everyday foods quietly trigger inflammation and keep people stuck. When you remove those triggers, pain often improves faster than expected. The pain-free plate shows you 7 foods that support healing. And you can download it now at bodycheck.co.uk/pain-free-plate. All right, let's continue with the episode.
So this is, for example, on the left is a brain. This is an EEG, top-down drawing of a collection of data that we did on a 20-year-old. So what you're seeing is theta activity, which is slow waves. Slow waves is interesting if you're trying to figure out stress inside the body. By the way, this is a pattern that often happens in people with chronic pain. This is how the brain looks. It's drained and it's out of sync. So what you're looking for is slow wave activity, and the green shows you the normal theta activity in the brain. in Mike, and this one is 20 years old with ADHD, stomach pain at the time, frequent stomach pain. The yellow will show double the slow wave activity, and the red shows triple the slow wave activity. Well, when we take those metabolites that we made, sort of replacing the bacteria that's missing, we did this in the form of a nasal spray, and this is instant. So this immediately triggers the frontal. Now, if you don't have frontal lobe activity, like in sync, what does that mean? It's like, that's your executive function, that's your decision making, so in other words, what's more active in the back of the brain, this is my view. Everything's in my view. And you don't have to, you could take it for entertainment value if you want, but I'm not saying, this is just what I see based on my experience. So, what you're seeing is that this person here has a lot more activity that works in the back of their brain. And that, to me, means they're more impulsive, they're more primal. It's all part of that ADHD type thing, I think. And then here, this is their discernment, their decision-making, their ability to process lots of different streams of data at the same time. This is all out of sync. Instantly, we saw this. And what also happens is there's a lack of slow activity in the back of the brain. This is what is often seen in deep meditation. So he is not meditating. He is eyes open, and we see this instantly. So that's just sort of one thing, one metabolite, and one missing bacteria that I think is affecting. I actually think it's a global phenomenon, and I think that's why we've seen such a big change. More people in fight or flight is this one thing, just one. There's many, but this is just one thing. So a couple other things that I'll kind of show you. There's a few tools that we just went by. This is an interesting tool for pain. This is an 1800s technology called the multi-wave oscillator. Is a researcher in the 1800s named Lakowski, who was around during the Tesla era. This is only the antenna. You can't see up top here. This is a Tesla coil, and then it goes into a machine. I'm going to see if this plays. So this machine it creates lightning and very high voltage, throws it through a Tesla coil. This is producing energy across all cells. And in that, what happens is that you charge your body, charging your cell's body. In theory, I'll just say in theory, because I don't, just want to be careful. But and that's what we experience is people that are in pain, once they get even cellular energy, their generalized pain levels will go down, but their clarity goes up too. We're affecting the same pathways, as far as chronic illness. This is something that's just crazy, but this was the one on the left is a woman, if you can believe it, that was working on this device or was treated with this device, but she has something obvious on her face, which you can guess what that is. And that was April 25th, 1932. She did 3 weeks of treatments. It was 7 minutes at a time. And the person on the right is May 30th, 1932. And that thing's gone. But I want you to notice a few things. Not only did her headaches and other things disappear, but take a look at her lips on the left and the right. Take a look at the neck on the left and the right. So this is just one thing from 1932, and they did it with a car battery and a spark generator from a Model T Ford, and they recreated that 1800s technology in 32. There's also things that we see in pain. Now, this is an area that is interesting because this is like too much of a good thing, too much of a bacteria. But we have scanners that can take a look at frequencies that show up with certain things. Sometimes it's toxins and sometimes it's infections. And so this was Steve that was having some stomach things, and this was a type of coli infection. And if you take frequencies and apply them to frequencies, that's the theory, you can actually remove the frequency in the body. And that was the end of this. And this guy is an engineer, and he loved this, and he's come back multiple times, and that same thing's gone. So it's a way to potentially take a look at some things that could be out of sorts. What I want to show you here, do you hear this playing or no?
No, can't
I
hear
don't
it.
think so. So let me see what my own. I'm gonna miss the. Unfortunately, I'll not do it for now. Let me move on to some things in the blood. That person, by the way, after we sprayed her with the metabolites, she was a stress level of a 13. She just recently lost her home in the Palisades fires, and she felt peace instantly. Those types of videos are available on my website. It could be, I guess, a teaser to make people interested to come and see it, but I would play it for you if I could. The audio just isn't there. So this one is a recent one. This was January 2nd. There was a guy who walked in, and I had seen him a month before, and we checked his blood. It did not look like this, the one on the left. What you're seeing in the white brightness is nothing normal. This is an unnatural phenomenon that was inside him. And we saw this during the COVID days, and I hadn't seen it this bad since. And I'm like, it looks like you just did like a booster or something. And I don't know if that's true or not. And again, this is just our opinion. I'm not here to speak absolutes, but I'm just sharing my experience. And many people, I would say some people in the circles inside my scalpel are talking about that this pattern inside here, these are nanobots. And then I see these come out of the other, I would say the old style technology, which they call parasites in the blood, or sometimes they call it anomalies or cholesterol to try to have us not pay attention to it. But these come out of things that those things dying. And I'll show you some pictures of those in a bit. But this is riddled with these things. And these things I only saw during, the COVID days when, people were coming after, they had, like a booster or something. So I saw this and I'm like, what happened? Because this is not how you looked a month ago. He had 3 days before, and I'm not saying this is that, because I don't know, but 3 days before he had a Hep B vaccine. And I'm like, this is not, I'm like, is it in everything now? Because that's not the style we used to see with somebody that would do that. And then anyway, this is him to the right. This is 3 days later. So that's what good blood looks like to the right. So we were able to, through doing the things that we do, to take that out. And the anxiety, stress, tiredness, and soreness in his body was gone. This is a guy who also happened to have 5 heart attacks and a seizure. The day I met him, he had a seizure, like in front of me. And so this is what his blood looked like. It's not supposed to look like this. All this white stuff is that other believe technology, and I see this in the water as well. I'll show you better pictures of it. This is like crushed, but this is what his blood had looked like, and this was literally like a couple days later. This isn't perfect. You still see some effect going on in the red blood cells, but he ultimately left looking stunning in the blood. I'm going to move past a couple of these. This one's interesting because it really does apply. This was somebody that actually was diagnosed, as I understand. We don't diagnose anything, we don't treat anything, but they were formally diagnosed apparently with Alzheimer's. This is the stacking of this pattern and condition that I see, where it's memory issues. And the idea of not using words that have an actual diagnosis is really important, because I don't know what they mean when they say it, but I can tell you that they said they had it, and they seem to have those symptoms. What we see in these cells is that they're stacked like peas. There's no fluffiness to them. This is a unique pattern, I'd say, because having traditional stacking is one thing, but this is so tight that the cells look like pea pods. Anyway, that was when she arrived. This is 4 hours later, and all we're doing is essentially, in this case, is charging her cells. That was 2 years ago. She's now 78. She looks like this, and she's traveling. She used to be a shut-in. Anxious, wouldn't go outside. She's living a full life. I can show you a lot of this stuff. This one's interesting because we had mentioned in our pre-discussion a little bit about autism. My son had obviously that condition, but I never saw his blood back then because I wasn't into blood. I was just learning other stuff. But this is a 16-year-old with autism. It's functional, but he's very perseverated. He wouldn't speak in context of what's going on in the room, kind of say, or what the discussion was, and very, very challenging on the family. So this is his blood. It looks like a rug. It looks totally different. It looks like a beehive or something. And then this is 4 hours later. I only had him for 4 hours. And his mom said basically he became a man that day. So this is how it applies in pain is that, like here, for example, this is a PT. He's a renowned PT in California, actually. And he's a chiropractor as well, but he's a sports performance guy, works with Olympic athletes and stuff. And it took me forever to invite him to come in. And I find traditional people, for some reason, if they don't have that mindset of wanting to see the impossible, wanting to get extraordinary results by looking in extraordinary places, it's very hard to get these people to even show up. But he ended up showing up, but he had a sprain on his hand from which he described as like a 5 of 10 in pain. And this was our version 1 of lasers. I basically took all the laser frequencies in science, put them into a spreadsheet. It was a huge project. Got them into a spreadsheet, saw the outcome results that the study said, and then started targeting different frequencies and powers and frequency of blinking. You can call it. So there's the frequency of the wave, and then there's the frequency of how it blinks, and then you have power, and that's pretty much it. It's like 4 categories that, decide what type of laser energy you're going to get out. There's other things in regards to manufacturing style, but that's it. So I had 2 of my first lasers. These are USB powered. These are very low power levels. And with the frequencies in his hand, just a couple minutes, I have a video of this too, because he has this look on his face, this dumbfounded, holy cow look, because his pain went down to like a 0.5. And that was just in like 5 minutes. So what's happening in there, somebody might ask. It seems to be, I was using lasers to try to target stem cells, because there is some science that shows that if you put the right frequency into plasma, you're going to get more stem cells. That's one way to trigger it. We trigger stem cells, in our view, many different ways now. It's actually way easier. I don't use even lasers for it in any way, shape, or form. But this is that. So within a few minutes, that improved.
A lot of what people try for pain actually are good ideas. Stretching, strength work, physio, massage. The problem isn't that those things don't work. It's that they're incomplete on their own. Pain usually comes from a combination of factors across multiple systems. When we address the whole picture, results finally stick. If you want help understanding your full picture, book a discovery call at bodycheck.co.uk/consultation. Now, back to the show.
I want to talk about this in this slide here. Yeah. So, and by the way, I'll show you the laser in a little bit, but the ones we have now is version 8, and it looks like a lightsaber, and it's amazing and way more powerful than just that little thing. And I mean powerful in regards to effect. This is another thing I see that is causing a lot of inflammation in people. I called it the word parasite back in the day, but this is that technology, I believe. It's just not natural. And if you look at it at this part here, you can actually see it has a structure to it. There's a really bright energy in the blood. It seems to have more energy than anything else in the blood. And then on the top left-hand corner here, you'll see a stem cell. So a stem cell is notable because it has an energy in the center, a different energy. There's 3 energies in this first ring, and there's another 3 energies in the second ring. This is a very complex thing. I think that there's a lot more going on in stem cells than we realize, and they're way more important than we think. Even though we think they're amazing, I think that's just the beginning of things. I think these are actually like a power source, actually, because these things that light up so well in the blood, these abnormal things that seem to take energy out of the red blood cells, also steal stem cells. There can be thousands on there. This one's partially dead, or else we wouldn't be able to see the stem cells on it, because the white light when they're fully alive is so bright it looks like you're looking into the sun. So there are still stem cells left over on this thing. We see thousands. They're so densely they steal the stem cells.
The stem cell on the top left,
yes,
to me looks like, if you look at Kirlian photography, and they show someone's aura, that's what that looks like.
Isn't that very interesting?
Mm.
Yeah, we could probably do an hour on diving into that, because what I know is I don't think any of us, and I don't know if that's true, I'll talk about me, but the way I look at this is that this is like a holy grail that people haven't realized. And here's one of the challenges. I think why is it so important? I think because one thing is because if this is a technology, they know to grab these things and they take them from you. Here's the other side of
Mm.
it. And I don't speak like this typically, so it's a lot to do with you. But when people are triggering these and they don't realize that these are in their body waiting to feed on it, they are fueling their future mm, health issues. And so that's how I found this to begin with, is because we were playing with ways to trigger stem cells. And luckily enough, we were finding these things. Like obviously we're doing it with a microscope. So all of a sudden these things show up out of nowhere in my son's blood. And I'm like, you didn't have this before. Why would triggering, and we did it with a vitamin, a vitamin administration. We're triggering, he had tons of these, and all of a sudden these start growing. And then I start looking at these because I'm like trying to figure it out. I'm like, oh my God, these are waiting here for stem cell triggering. So in other words, the more healthy people are, the more these things capitalize. So there's like an equal and opposite that's being created. So I think people that are going to Mexico and grabbing, stem cells from umbilical cords and paying $10,000, $12,000 are actually, creating an early death. But your knee feels better for a period
Mm.
of time, but there's a system capitalizing on this effort. So in other words, a good way to approach it, if you're gonna, is you make sure that you know how to manage these as you create these. And that's basically one of the things we do around the philosophies that we're actually working on. To give you another example, in the blood, take a look at the pattern of the stem cells across this thing. It looks like matrix code. And this
Mm.
thing is a little more alive, so you can see the glowing that comes off of that. I have to dim this down. You see how the red blood cells don't look very strong at all. The white blood cells don't look very strong at all. I have to dim this down in order for you to see into it. That's how strong this thing is. So, and I have different names for it. This is an interesting thing. This is water from a restaurant at a theme park. And I'm finding those things in the water. I find it in
Mm.
every water supply there is. But remember the other things that came from that guy in the beginning that had the Hep B vaccine, that in proximity, I'm not saying it's related, but these things look the same to me. And these pop out as these guys regenerate and die. As they're dying off, we see these things pop out. And this looks like this grown up. And this is another one version of these. But anyway, this is not, to me, normal. It's not supposed to be like this. In fact, most waters look better than this, but have the same thing. It's just weird to me that I found this in a place that was, that had a lot of kids in it. That was kind of haunting to me. And then if you do colonics and you see things like this come out, if you're patient enough and you know how to do it, and then you create a tube that has the exit where you see what's going on inside, they have, to me, a very similar thing to it. These are examples of people pre and post. This is a 12-year-old that had been through absolute hell. And this is a few days later. This is him as he came in the door. And this is 3 days later. People will look completely different. They
Mm.
act completely different. He was shy, shy, achy, tired. See how his left eye doesn't look the same as the right?
Mm.
Yeah, that's gone. So there's so many things going on when we have this cellular inflammation and you remove it, how people change in just a few days. They look completely different. It's quite noticeable. And if you look at the outside, that's what I see happening on the inside. All right. So let's talk. Let me see if I can stop sharing for a second. Get back to you. Let me see if I can do that. Yeah, here we are. So pain.
Yeah.
So today, the laser is like this. Looks like a lightsaber, very strong. And what basically is that when you have pain in general, there's a lot of things going on. There's the blood issue, the generalized inflammation, and then you have localized things. Laser's really good at helping to reset the local things, and depending on what you want to use, energy. Energy as well, when you're charging the cells, reduces that. Most people, like we track that vertical when we're putting people through this research, and we'll look at brain fog, energy, stress, pain. They're all related in my view, just like when you saw that slide where his stomach pain was related to the brain dysregulation. There's this connection. It's all related. So we look at all that and then we apply. And for things like the lasers, somebody say, oh, well, I have back pain, or we've seen people like with really bad L4, L5 stuff where you can literally see it, sticking out, and this stuff
I've had
literally
that.
does this. Like I've got one video in our channel where you can see a woman, 80 years old, she walks like this, and L4, L5 are sticking out. And all we did is we used our version 3 back in the day of this, and then the L4, L5 did this. I had no idea if it was going to work. It literally went in, and she stood up, and she was pain-free. So there's a lot of different, I think, we could talk for hours, but I'm just trying to give you a little overview and
Yeah.
touch on, it's like, yes, trauma is absolutely involved. The way I see trauma and this whole thing is this, and I've discovered this in proof in the blood, and also using mercury vapor meters and things like that to track toxins. Like I've got just hanging around by my desk. I mean, it's a $15,000 mercury vapor meter. This is one of 3 we have. This is an old one. But I can track mercury coming out of the body. Usually coming out of the hands and feet is where the body vaporizes it the most. And if you have somebody who has emotional trauma and they're in it, you can actually see their mercury vapor levels lower in the excretion because we're breathing it all the time. So you're a processing machine all the time. What I found is if they're dealing with childhood trauma, pain, or infection, however you want to look at it, we'll call it dysbiosis of the body inside, to stay on vernacular, that all has a higher priority than taking out the trash. So it's like this. It's like the body it's like in your room, you've got trash cans. They fill up, you take them out. No problem. You don't want to leave them there. They smell if you don't take it out. We know to do that. Now, if you walk into your room to take out your trash and it turns out your wall is on fire, the trash does not matter. It doesn't matter how bad it smells. I'm putting out the fire. This is what the body does in regards to detoxification versus inflammation and dysbiosis. So that type of dysbiosis and inflammation has a higher priority than taking out the trash. So if you've got chronic pain, it's very likely you've got a buildup of environmental toxins, pesticides, plastics, metals in you. That's what we see. So we try to look at this as a layered approach. In other words, I don't want to try to rip out some metals in someone who's got some sort of dysbiosis going on, or dysregulation of their brain, or dysregulation in their infectious patterns or their bacterial patterns. So that's the fire. Now you think if the room's on fire, that is the most important thing. There's no way that I'm going to not focus on that, and I'm going to just be putting out the fire, unless a tiger walks in the room and starts running at you like it's going to kill you. Now that fire becomes completely unimportant. It's time to get away from the tiger. Tiger is trauma and stress. And that's what we see time and again. And that's why, like, for me, every time I was working with people with COVID, when they started getting better, like there's like a 2.5 hour process at the time that I had for COVID, where it's like you see it and then you don't. 2.5 hours. As you're doing it, every single time, it started as like I thought a coincidence. Somebody would start talking about their trauma, and then suddenly, I should say, we're working on their COVID, and all of a sudden they start talking about a trauma that happened right when the COVID started. And I saw it was like, oh, that's odd. And the second time it's like, wow, that's twice in a row. That's weird. And then it was every time. And I saw the body actually can access the trauma to release it if the body starts healing. So I could literally see the hierarchy happening. And it seemed to be very important, actually, that the trauma was addressed. And we have a whole program designed around how to look at these events that we call trauma that are essentially they're mislabeled. They're not organized right, because we all have 240 possible events that we can call traumas. One is death, grief. Another one is betrayal, and the list goes on. One is chronic illness, chronic pain. So these are all learnings or events that we can take into trauma and say we're traumatized, or we can look at what is this trying to tell us and how do we make it the best thing that's ever happened to us. The people that stay here, actually their cells look better, because I can take someone that's complaining about their alcoholic mother and their abusive father, and I can check their blood, talk them through the trauma, check it again. Massively different. One looks like, one almost looks like cancer. The other one looks like child's blood, perfectly clean. So there's that hierarchy that's involved that's important, which is toxins are last. They're the bottom view. Dysbiosis, inflammation, things out of control is the second. And the number one thing that the body sees as a priority is the tiger, which is how we deal with one of 240 events that we can call traumas. I'll pause there.
Yeah.
So I can get something to drink. We have to wrap up soon. I hate to say it because I'm supposed to go talk to a group of CEOs that want to talk about how to make their businesses more efficient by taking care of people in the same way, which is kind of cool. But I love this, and we should continue to go. But pick up and maybe do more episodes. But I'll pass back to you.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, what you described is not that dissimilar as to how I see pain. There's a few things that kind of came up in my head, but one question I love to ask people is, what do you think pain is? One thing I've learned after years of helping people out of chronic pain is that your body wants to heal. It's always trying something, but sometimes your diet is triggering inflammation faster than your system can calm it down. When you remove those irritants, healing finally gets ahead. The Pain-Free Plate walks you through 7 foods that support this process. Download it now at bodycheck.co.uk/pain-free-plate. Now, back to the episode.
Great question. First off, pain, in my view, only happens in the mind. And it is because it's a reaction to a signal that's trying to get your attention. And just like the heart can produce a lot of power, the heart's trying to tell you the truth, and your mind, emotional pain is your heart tells you the truth and your brain is perceiving it wrong. Like my mother dying was something I felt in the heart. My response in my head is I couldn't live without her. That was the pain. If my mind would have perceived it as you're in the beginning of an incredible journey that's going to help humanity and lots of people you love, and you're going to have a mind expanded like you can't imagine, it wouldn't have hurt. So I think how we respond to the stimulus of, hey, you need to check this out, and how we approach it, and if we believe it's supposed to be forever, like depression is really just sadness that you think is going to last forever. How you perceive the signaling will determine what it is and what you do with it. So we are in a world where people are told to deal with it, numb it, and we have enough guilt and shame to think we deserve it. A lot of people I see have that, and they actually don't have the power to want to heal because their spirit's so believing in their shames and guilts. They don't want to take that initiative, and they have enough fear to begin with of what happened to them in the past that they don't know how to discern what's fearful and what they should move towards. So I don't know. That's my short answer on what I think pain is, but I think it's something. It's just a signal. And your body's amazing. Like your body's made a million decisions from the time you woke up till you sat in that chair to survive. And it did it while you were, having some water and taking a pee. And your body's amazing. And for us to think that anything that's happening is bad, even cancer cells, to me, signal, it's a response. There's something going on. I see the body as I'm here to support this amazing machine. And I happen to really love humans for some reason. I mean, I really love them. I want to take care of as many people as I can, whoever's in front of me, with everything I've got. And all I want to do is I want to support the body in doing what it wants to do, because it knows best. And I'm trying to help move some things out of the way and put some things in to help the body perform at its best and try to help people to get to their best selves. And in that model, there's nothing bad that's going on. And pain is just a signal that our brain does not know how to get the full picture on. That's what I see.
Yeah, I see it very similar. I mean, obviously, pain is there. It's always got a purpose, right? So
absolutely.
If you're in, if you're in bare feet and you're walking outside and your foot hits a little bit of broken glass, right, there's your signal. There's your signal. Right.
Yeah. The fire on the grill, like, ooh.
Yeah.
Good learning.
But it's interesting what you were saying about, looking at people's blood compared to, when they're really stressed compared to when they're not really stressed.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine who's been on the show a couple of times, he talks about a time when he was working for a Premier League soccer club, and he was on the medical team. He was in charge of injury rehabilitation, and he was working with this, international player worth millions and millions of pounds, and he had the whole medical team watching him. And this player was stood on 2 sets of weighing scales, so 1 foot on each weighing scale. And he said to the guy, or he said to the medical team, look at the dials. So this guy was, I think, 7 kilos heavier on one leg than the other. So it's about 16 pounds. And he said to the player, I want you to imagine the best sex you've ever had in your life. He said he could see his player going through his Rolodex.
That's a good story.
And,
good story. I like this.
And then he says, right, are you there? He's like, yeah, I'm there. And he points to the scales to the rest of the medical team. And this guy is bang level. And he said, right, now what I want you to do is think about the most stressful event of your life. And
this is amazing. Okay, yeah.
And then he's like, are you there? And he's like, oh, yeah. And he says to the medical team, look at the dials. He's now 8 kilos, so maybe like 19 pounds out of balance. So it's interesting. There's a correlation between what you see in blood.
That's awesome.
And what those of us that work with biomechanics, we see biomechanically as well.
That's amazing.
Which shows how powerful our mind is,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, what I see it is that, our perception of reality is the biggest pain. I was just sharing this morning that stress is really stress itself, not the dysregulated stress in the blood or the brain, although it just highlights the same thing as what I'm going to say, is that if I'm stressed, it is the fact that my intuition is not aligning with how I'm perceiving with my limited abilities, the universe, the world, the moment. Excuse me. I was stressed that my mother died, but my perception of it now is I don't grieve at all. I just love the hell out of her, and I keep her. Can't see her, but her picture's up. So pain is the same in a way, and we're very loyal to our grief. We're loyal that we need to have love in order to have grief. We're loyal to the fact that pain is bad. When you remove that and you get to the business of understanding the signal, you don't leave a crying child in the room, although maybe some people do, but that is a massive signal. And in the case of the scale, when you're saying like the worst sex, I'm picturing him making it really bad, not an experience that led him to his wife, in the scheme of the journey. If he was in sync with that was the thing that brought me to the path of this moment or the best sex ever, maybe the scale wouldn't have even tipped. So his perception caused his pain, which had this dynamic effect on his body. So there's a lot to be said about how we approach pain and how we approach the universe and approach things, and how it's going to affect our blood on a cellular level and a mechanical level on the scale. This is fun. We do this all day. I love you. I love your mind. I love that you're doing the show in service of humans and this exploration. And I know it's one of many that your mind has the capability of doing. So I just want to say, I met you literally like an hour ago, right? So I love how your mind works. I love what you're doing, and I see a lot of us as being very sifting I missed the F sifting through reality to in service of yourself and people. So yeah, brother, it's been awesome.
I know you've got to go, but I want to ask you one more question.
All right, try.
I think I asked you one of 6 questions, so definitely need to get you back on.
I'll come back 5 more times.
Yeah. So obviously you do a lot of things. You have a lot of techniques you can use in your facility.
Yeah.
Obviously, if people go back into the real world and
how do they protect against themselves? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry. I just, I get excited. My mind's so what I do is we work in like 4-day research pods. And the fourth day is science and protection. But we treat the water. Look at that. I saw a little interference with this. We treat the water in a way that kills the technology so that you can drink technology disabled water. We tell people one of the biggest things that your audience can do that would usually affect inflammation like in 24 hours is remove the following foods. Try this, and you may agree or disagree, but I would just say just test this for yourself. And remove all complex carbs and starches from your life. Remove all dairy from your life. Remove bananas from your life. Remove eggs from your life. You can ask me why later, but just do that. So what does that leave you with? Protein and vegetables and fruit with some sprinkled berries in there. Coconut, things like that's fine. But anything that is a disaccharide or polysaccharide, complex carbs or starches, remove. No table sugar, no maple syrup. Honey's fine. If you do that, and there's videos on my channel where you can see people like 20 years ago lose their rheumatoid arthritis, they can lose eczema, asthma symptoms just by doing that. So between that and I would say learn more, there's a sort of a bit of a course to go through, learn more about how to get the technology out of your water. Also, I would say increase vitamin D and sunlight. That's a big deal. Vitamin D, K2. You could take some melatonin at night, increase your antioxidant overnight activity. Those things, I would say, we kind of send people away with. And if they're disciplined in treating their water and their diets, we see people, that travel and they come back a year later and look amazing or better. We do get people they come back and they just look another layer better. So the idea is you can't protect against everything. You're going to drive by a cell tower or something of the sorts. You're going to live in a house, but you can control a lot of things, and the things that you can control, take care of. And the complex carbs and starches will grow things in a direction that the body wasn't meant to. Milk do the same thing. Excuse me. There's even interference in here of having this discussion. So clearly it must be important. So that's a little of what I tell them. We do have some remedies that we give them for the maintenance as well. So I'm a big person. I don't like recurring. I don't like systems that like recurring revenue because they don't really care about the people. I really like to educate and help people to learn what they can do to live their lives. So, it's like if I see somebody once and they don't ever need to see me again, then I did them a karmic, really good solid. And that's kind of how I like to live my life. So, hope that helps. It's a good start. And I think we could probably do a week of podcasts and get into some details. I hope this was of service in some degray today.
Yeah,
and
great.
I look forward to us doing it again. This is probably the first guest that's saying, okay, we're going to sign off now. Because I do have to, unfortunately, go because I do have
get
that.
some time, quite having to fit it in a short period of time, but that's all good. That's all good. Stan, before you go, where can people find you online?
Thanks for asking. It's there's two major places. There's no website. There's no Facebook group or anything like that actually, and there should be, but there isn't. Let's just say, and so you can go to a YouTube channel that has 200 and some odd videos of different people that have gone through some of this. And that's at stansrecoveries.com. Stans Recoveries will lead you right there. And the other one is I have a link tree, which will, bring you to different things about, how to get involved with this. And that's stanslinks.com. So it's stansrecoveries.com and stanslinks.com.
Great. And I'll pop those in the show notes as well.
Awesome.
Stan, thank you so much. This was, this warm-up episode has been really fascinating.
Episode one of our series. Yeah, no. And I can't begin to express my gratitude for you, because it really is helpful for me when I'm with people that are unafraid, ask the right questions, and also have been through their own version of experience like this. Like, I feel like we went through journeys that are very similar, that were just in different verticals. And it's very fun when I connect with people on this level. So I'm really grateful. I had an incredible time, and thank you for doing what you're doing for people.
Yeah, thanks for your sharing, and thanks for your time. Really
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
and I know you're from like the UK and stuff in London, but I would be hugging you right now. I just want you to know that as a California guy, I'd be hugging you, giving you lots of love.
It's a virtual hug.
I know. I'm hugging you. Here, I'm gonna just kind of reach in there, give you a hug. All right, I love you, brother. You're amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So that's it from Stan and me for this week. But be sure to tune in, same time, same place next week on Beyond the Pain. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Pain. If this episode resonated, please follow the show, leave a review, or share it with someone you know who's been struggling. And remember, pain is not permanent. With the right insight and support, you can turn it into power. Until next time, stay open, stay strong, and keep moving beyond the pain.